It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Barbara Casey, BarbaraCaseyAgency.com, talking about her book, Assata Shakur, a 20th Century Escaped Slave. Coming up next week, I believe, we're going to have Rupert Quaintance, at least for an hour. Rupert was a host here on American Freedom Radio who was advocating for these molested children. He went to the UK to look into this situation and wound up getting arrested over there. And he was convicted, and he just got out. He did like 4.5 months time over there in the UK, and he just got back. He's back in the States, and I think this is going to be his first interview. Also, too, this event I'm doing here on February 5th, on Monday, at 3081 South Maryland Parkway, 89109. I'm invited by Doug Millar to do this event here, and I'll be speaking on McMartin Preschool and Jeffrey Epstein, a lot of stuff about that. You might recall Doug Millar. He's been on the show a few times, an advocate for children as well. So, little theme going on there. But we have today Assata Shakur, a 20th century escaped slave, and our guest is Barbara Casey, BarbaraCaseyAgency.com. So, Barbara, when we left off, we were saying how many years did Assata Shakur get?
Well, before we get to that, okay. I probably ought to explain that there were actually 2 trials for the Turnpike Shootout. The first one was taking place in 1973, and by then that was when her Evelyn Williams had given up her practice and all the things that she was involved in to devote full time to defending Assata. But in addition to Evelyn Williams, Assata had pulled together a group of attorneys and they were all big-name attorneys: Stanley Cohen, Lennox Hines, Florence Kennedy, Lawrence Stern, Lewis Myers, and then William Kunstler. And she had a good team of lawyers behind her to defend her. But the problem was, Assata says this herself, that there were too many cooks in the kitchen, as she described it. They were all trying to run the show, and there was just a lot of disharmony and ineffectual going treatments of everything. And Williams and Kunstler in particular were constantly being charged with contempt of court because of their outbursts and their the way they conducted themselves. In addition to that, Assata was not an easy person at all during any of the trials, and she was disrespectful to the court. She spat out at everyone. She yelled profanities throughout the different trials. She just did not conduct herself as she probably should have in order to get the respect of the court. This went on through all the trials. In many of the trials, she acted as her own co-counsel, and she must have done a good job because, like I said, the only one that she was convicted was in the Turnpike shooting. So, unfortunately, that first trial, they had to postpone it because she became pregnant. And that happened during one of the other trials when she had a co-defendant, Kamal Siddiqui, and it turned out he was the father of her baby. They had disrupted the court hearings constantly and were put in a holding cell where they could listen to what was going on rather than be in the actual court and disrupt it. And apparently during those times that she became pregnant.
A little romantic interlude over there in the holding cell. Is that what happened?
Right.
Oh, boy.
And one of the interesting interviews I had was the son of one of the guards, and who talked about this. You know, it was open for anyone to walk by and see, and but that's what happened.
Let me ask you a quick question. Evelyn Williams, now, was she a criminal lawyer in her private practice before she took over?
Most of her law had to do with social services. She wanted trying to help her people, and many of them couldn't afford her, and so she wasn't making a lot of money at all. And but she, in this case, of course, she was a criminal lawyer. But even though that wasn't her calling, that wasn't her expertise. But she had all these other attorneys with her who were.
Right.
During when Assata became pregnant, they postponed the trial because they were afraid that she would miscarry, and so it took until 1977, 3 years later, that they would resume the trial. The trial itself lasted 9 weeks, and I don't know. They interviewed literally hundreds of people to sit on the jury, and until they finally settled on the jurors that they wound up with.
Wasn't there a problem with the jury, too, that many of them were related to police officers or had friendships with police officers?
That did come up, and there was also a problem. Someone had left a copy of a book. Let's see, what was the name of that
what
book?
Was that?
Blue something. I've forgotten the name now. It's escaped me, but and Roots. Someone had left a copy of Roots, and they felt that might show sympathy towards the black people and their cause. So there were little things like that, the gamesmanship that was going on. But finally, when this second trial got going, that was when they had the experts come in, and they, unfortunately, at one point during the trial, Stanley Cohen, one of Assata's attorneys, was killed.
Really? I'm not familiar with that. What happened?
Well, they don't know. He was apparently at home and was found dead the next morning. His home had been ransacked. His offices had been ransacked. And then at some time later, all of his papers that involved the trial, that he had about the trial, were gone. So naturally, Ed Evelyn accused the FBI of doing it, or of the New Jersey State Patrol had people to go in there and do it. But that was what her accusations were. They were never able to find out what happened.
Yeah, I was aware that there was a burglary where a bunch of defense exhibits and case product were stolen, and they also claimed all the time that they were being wiretapped too, as well, right? The defense is being wiretapped.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. And then even Evelyn, here now, she was Assata's attorney, but she was put under conditions that were just unacceptable and unfair, because no other attorney was subjected to the kind of treatment she was subjected to. She was searched in every way imaginable before she could go and talk to Assata, to discuss the case. Assata, while she was discussing the case with Assata was chained to her bed. I mean, it was just horrible conditions. And it was all during this period between the two trials, when Assata was kept in solitary confinement, and she claimed that she was constantly put under cruel and unusual punishment. They kept her cell freezing cold. They gave her inedible food to eat. They kept the bright lights on 24 hours a day so she couldn't sleep. loud noises all through the night, just on complaints. And her attorneys were always trying to get remedies for this, and they just couldn't make any headway throughout the entire thing.
Now, I know there was a period of time, too, when she was held in custody in a men's prison rather than a women's prison. Was that during this period of time?
Yes, that happened during the same time. Oh. She was pulled back and forth between prisons, and in one case, one of the prisons, she finally got into a women's prison, but it was going to be closing, and so then they moved her back to the men's prison. I mean, it was just horrible conditions. There was a point where she was put in the prison where these white women, a group of white women, were held, and they would do something like throw lighter fluid into cells of black people and then throw a match. They were the Assyrian, the women's organization of this group. They just horrible things that she experienced. Assata was convinced that she was going to be murdered, and that was the whole point of her being placed in the where she was being placed.
Well, I think you meant to say Aryan. I think you said Syrian.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah,
it's the Aryan, the white supremacist group of women, right? That she was placed in there with. Okay, fascinating. Okay, I wasn't even aware of that. But go ahead.
But so these are the conditions that she was confronted with, and then finally in 1977, when they did get through the trial, and then the jurors finally had it. It was interesting because probably one of the most revealing statements came from an admitted killer, a man named Tyrone Rison, who said that he knew of the Black Panthers, and he worked with many of the Black Panthers in various capacities, but he was able to reveal quite a bit of information on Assata and things that she had done. So all of that.
Well, give me an idea. This gentleman you say who knew about the Black Panther Party, and he testified. I think she did, but he wasn't there at the scene of this incident out there on the highway, right?
No, he wasn't.
Oh yeah.
But he did come into play after the escape.
Okay.
So he played a big part in revealing the things that she had done prior to that, and exposing her and how they were able to accomplish all the things that they did.
And he testified at the Turnpike trial?
He testified during that trial. It was not during that trial. It was later, after she had already escaped,
okay.
And then he was testifying in another trial. But during that trial, revealed information on how the escape took place, but the things that occurred prior to that for the trials that all the trials that Assata had been involved in, including the Turnpike trial, because he was with the group. He heard them talking, and he knew the information that was being shared.
And so, he became an informant for the police, for the prosecutor?
He did, and the reason was obviously to get a lesser sentence for himself.
All right. And what was he charged with?
Murder.
Okay, so he actually killed somebody. He actually had a gun in his hand and killed somebody, but then he turned on his friends. Now, let me ask you a question now. While she was in the prison there, and you described the treatment she was receiving in this prison, the UN Human Rights Commission, I believe, came out with right. They investigated this, right? And what happened? The UN investigated this.
They did,
yeah.
And they found that in favor of her, of what her attorneys had been telling them, everybody who would listen, and